This is E&P Reports, a service of Editor and Publisher magazine. Since 1884, the authoritative voice of news publishing. Hello again, Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P magazine. And today we bring back Gordon Borrell, CEO of Borrell Associates, the premier research firm that analyzes advertiser spending throughout the United States of America. Gordon is revising his 2020 forecast because when it was released at the end of 2019, who knew that COVID-19 would be such a major factor on where advertising dollars are going? Is it sobering? Yeah, but there's some good news in where local advertising expenditures are going, and there's some good news in there for print newspapers as well. So I urge you to stay tuned and stay with us as E&P goes one-on-one with Gordon Borrell. Gordon Borrell, it's been a few months since we've had you on E&P Reports. Luckily, you don't look too much older, so it's nice to have you. I assume we have you at home right now. Is that where you are?
Actually, I'm in my office. Okay. I found one of the benefits of the crisis here is that you tell everybody to go home and be safe and work from home. You set them up. And you personally, me, work from home, and I have 3 teenagers basically at home. And then I realize I've got an empty office. So I've been in the office every day, and it's been wonderful. I'm all alone, and there are no annoying children. And the refrigerator in the kitchen right over there stays full.
I have a 17-year-old daughter at home as well, and I just don't see her. I mean, it's like I'm up in we can go on. Anyway, let's put that aside. The reason we're chatting now, like 3 months after we chatted before, is we had you on to release the data of your local advertiser survey. For those that don't know Borrell Associates, we've always discussed research on E&P. You guys are the ones that talk to the advertising community. You're the guys that track advertising dollars in all shapes, flavor, and color. And I shouldn't call it advertising dollars. I guess I should now call it marketing investments, because a lot of this money they're spending, correct, isn't even advertising money anymore. And you're tracking that as well, correct?
Yeah. Advertising is about a third of what's well over $1 trillion in spending. So everybody tends to focus on advertising. But when you look at the total expenditure that businesses put out to get the word out about themselves, it's 3 times larger than advertising. And we track it, Mike, not only across the US and in Canada, but our forte is really tracking it in an individual local market.
Right.
And the reason for that is when you and I both were in the newspaper business back in the 90s, I remember consultants coming in and saying, this is happening and that's happening. And we would always go, well, not in our market. Our market is different. So we can tell you what's happening in your market and how actually it is different or not. That's what we do.
All right, so the reason we're chatting, it's on this date. We should date stamp this now because this is all a moving target. So we're now releasing today on Tuesday. Today is what? June 30th, right? 2020. You're about to release major information on your ongoing SMB study. Am I correct? This is the one you release every year that has shifted since the last time you released the numbers. Now, first of all, before we get into your top line data, and again, I understand you're going to be giving us mostly aggregate data that you've uncovered. Could you go through the methodology, talk about the period of time this research was done and who you're specifically researching?
Sure. Well, what we're releasing is our new forecast. We're not releasing an SMB survey. The surveys that we conduct are just part of what we do. They inform, our data. Mm-hmm. So the methodology behind it, Mike, is that we have a database of 22 million businesses and their expenditures on advertising in every single market. That is created from sort of the bottom up, those businesses in the market, a D&B database of all of them, the types of business they are, the number of employees they have, so we know their size. And then we have the basis of IRS tax records, which shows how much those types of businesses spend per employee on advertising. So we get very accurate on what businesses in your market are spending on advertising. And then we layer in other data, surveys. We conduct the largest survey of local advertisers in the country. We usually do it in the April through June period. We didn't do it this year. We substituted something else. We buy lots of other data from IBIS World and just all kinds of sources that help us figure out where that money goes, whether it goes to SEM or newspaper, print advertising, or outdoor, or whether it goes to reputation management. So it's a sort of a sausage factory. And in the end, we have what we believe and what about 2,000 of our clients believe is a very accurate picture of, and it's a holistic picture of how much businesses spend on marketing in their individual local market. We will be releasing our new forecast. So our 2020 forecast, which we issued at the end of 2019, was wrong. And we realized that a couple months ago. We said, ooh, that's not going to be right. So we had to reissue it, which we normally do around mid-year.
Right.
And so that's what we'll be releasing, our new forecast for 2020 and beyond.
All right, so let's do it. We're going to look at some top line aggregate data. Let's focus on advertising expenditures, if we may, for the entire aggregate, for the whole. This is not individual markets, and we do know different markets react differently, especially through COVID-19. What's the number? Where is advertising going based on previous year? What have you got?
Sure. Well, just to be clear, we only track local. We don't track national.
Of course.
And we're just talking about the U.S., but this generally applies to Canada as well. Our original forecast was that advertising, which we call ex-political, excluding political advertising, would be up 1.3% right now, and we'll be releasing it on the webinar at 11 a.m. today. It'll be down 13.1%
right, so
for the full year.
You heard it here first. The Borrell prediction is advertising down 13.1%. Someone's listening in their car right now at a small newspaper in some small town and knows he's off 30% right now. I mean, he may have lost that much, especially if he's an alternative weekly. You understand where most of your revenue came from a specific advertising category like hospitality, restaurants, and what have you. Should that guy be driving off the road right now going nuts because he's ahead of that number? Or what advice do you give to an individual media company? Is that the benchmark they should be going for? If I'm off, I only want to be off 13%?
Well, first off, realize that what we're talking about is a rebudget for the full year. So if you're off, to year to date 30%, you're actually probably in pretty good shape. What we're looking at is the full 12 months of the year. So I would encourage you to rebudget. Think what it's going to be, which I think everybody, Mike, has already done because managers have said, okay, what does 2020 look like now? And so we're beginning to see these forecasts from major forecasting companies, Group M, and Pivotal Research and others, Magna Global. And they're coming in at between 8 and maybe 18% negative. So that is total. You asked, okay, a newspaper person driving in the car down 30%, should they drive off the road? Well, I have to ask what they're selling. So if they're selling print advertising and that's what they're reforecasting, well, then 30% would be pretty close to what we think it will be for the year.
Well, okay, that's it? 30%?
A little more than that. So I'll jump into the forecast for you. Individually, we are looking at some pretty significant declines for all types of traditional media, linear media, no surprise there, but they're much more significant than we had originally forecast. Newspapers, we originally forecast a decline of 17.9% for 2020. Right now, we're looking at a negative 32.6% for 2020.
33% decline, and that's print newspaper advertising aggregate for 2020.
Correct. It doesn't include any of the digital stuff, and of course doesn't include subscription revenue or things like that. It's just what advertising is bought by local businesses in printed newspapers, down 32%.
Boy, that is sobering. Can you give us any good news for the print industry at this moment of any kind from the study?
Yeah, absolutely. And others, are down as well. Magazines, radio down 25%. Directories, of course, Yellow Pages down 22%. Cinema advertising is at the bottom of the list or top, whichever way you put it. They're down 35%, understandably.
Of course.
But the good news is this, Mike, is the presentations that we gave in 2019 were kind of forewarning what was happening. We saw a decline in the number of daily newspapers and the number of weekly papers, mainly weekly newspapers, that were going dark. And we saw a number of radio stations going dark, roughly 6 per week last year. Six radio stations plus newspapers, so a total of 6. And we thought, wow, this is the survival of the fittest. The weaker ones are kind of dying off, which are leaving the stronger ones. So the good news is that the stronger ones are getting stronger. And when we looked at, we did a survey of advertisers about a month ago, and we said post-COVID-19, what do you think you will do? Will you buy more stuff? 29%, or new stuff, something new. 29% of advertisers said yes, post-COVID, we're going to buy some new stuff. And within that list, we asked them to tell us what it was. Within that list, we, kind of shockingly, but those in the newspaper industry who really believe in the product won't find it shocking. People were saying, well, we're going to buy some newspaper advertising. We're going to buy some print advertising, more print of some sort. So we would have thought maybe it wouldn't be in there at all. But we know that many newspapers have been out there really promoting their product and telling how powerful newspapers are, and they are. It's just that there are too many newspapers still out there, and the market won't support them, so the weaker ones are dying off. So the good news is newspaper advertising is still viable, and the ones that are significantly dying, we think, are kind of the weaker ones, and it's a shakeout. Plus, newspapers, as you know, have a lot more to sell than print advertising.
Let's continue with the, get those numbers out again on legacy media. 33 for newspapers down. Radio, you said 27. Is that the number I heard?
25.
25 in TV broadcast without political, correct?
Without political television, we had at increasing, I'm looking at the number here, increasing 6.2% this year. So it was looking pretty good. This year we have it down 15.4%. And TV is in quite a bit of trouble. There's still a very strong medium and still far fewer new television stations, broadcast TV stations per market than there are newspapers. So they're, singular choices, maybe 3 or 4 in the market. But the problem that they've got, Mike, is they're competing against OTT and other forms of targeted advertising. And then they have a big political season coming up where the massive orders for broadcast TV buys are already in place, and that locks out the auto dealers and the HVAC companies, the furniture stores that have been buying, and they get pissed and they move to something else. And that's the conundrum that television has. Huge political year, and then next year they go, wait a minute, where'd all the money go? So exactly. They're going to have some issues.
All right. Now let's get into the digital world. I'm assuming still Facebook and Google take the lion's share of local digital revenue. That's always been the case. But what's left over is still a significant piece of the pie, correct? To go after in the digital sphere.
Yeah. We've done some filings for on behalf of some media companies for the FCC and for some senators, showing that the Google and Facebook draw on advertising has been basically unfair, and the traditional media has a shrinking share of that. So you're right, Google and Facebook, probably about 70%, 60 to 70% of all digital advertising.
That's still about what you said that last year. So at least that's plateaued in some ways.
It's stabilizing. So here's the thing, at the local level, digital is not immune to seeing a down year this year. Really? It's not like, ooh, this is a springboard and everybody's just going to go to hell with newspapers and radio and TV. We're going to buy more Facebook. No. Have you read the news about Facebook? And advertisers pulling back. So here's what we have. Targeted banners and social down about 2% this year. Not too shabby, a decline. But
that includes the entire programmatic spectrum, the demand and supply side. Any targeted banner only down 2. That's not bad at all.
Yeah. Listings, paid search. These are the listing sites like AutoTrader and Cars.com and Craigslist, et cetera, down 5.6%. And general paid search, basically Google and Bing, 10.7% decline. Now, Mike, I've seen a number of markets where OTT is number one, streaming video. Overall for 2020, we see streaming video and OTT advertising down 2%. But let me take 15 seconds on this. In other markets, we see that up. And it's probably the only thing that has increased. If this, if the last recession was a springboard for companies like Groupon and companies like Facebook, this short, sharp recession that we just had is a springboard for OTT, and that is going to be big. And that's not taking television advertisers out of the equation, maybe a few. It's much more targeted at radio advertisers, because radio is, it's kind of multimedia when you think about it, a little more than just, print or just, flat audio. They do other things. And so they're more inclined to say, I really love to have a TV spot, but I can't afford TV. Here comes OTT. Now they can afford it.
Well, of
So
course.
we see
And also
great
radio
movement.
in markets, radio and TV are very regional buy. I mean, it's hard to say I just want to buy a neighborhood on a radio station or a TV station, which is why mostly dealer groups and franchises will buy that fringe and access and news. But on OTT, you can buy a specific human being. My question on that is, for those that don't understand, OTT is over the top. Just to give a quick overview, I'm sure many of you know this, it's the TV commercials you see when you're watching streaming video on the non-paid channels like Hulu, YouTube specific shows and what have you. Gordon, who's selling that now? Because I haven't seen a lot of newspapers step up to the plate and have their reps out offering OTT. Are broadcast TV stations offering that in their bag of tricks now locally? Are they realizing since they're losing it on one end, they should be selling it on the other?
Oh, hell yeah. They've got their own companies. Tegna's got their own company. Sinclair's got their own company. Nexstar has their own. And so they're selling the living hell out of it. They're reading the tea bags. And this is TV, so it's easy for them to sell. But Mike, you also have companies like Hulu and a few others that have started local sales forces. They are hiring, and they are going directly after TV and radio dollars. So you've got a new localized sales force. I don't know whether it will hold up, because many other national companies had tried to start local sales forces and then just got too costly. They wound up partnering with local media, but it's a free-for-all out there. OTT has literally in 18 months gone from advertisers telling us, huh?
What is it?
When we asked them about OTT, literally, we said, let's ask it in this panel. And it was about 18 months ago, and they just didn't know what the hell it was. A great percentage of them did not know what OTT was. Now, the majority of them not only know what it is, but are really interested in buying it.
All right, continue down I stopped you on the digital list. Did you complete everything? Where's video? Where's anything else that I'm missing in here? Where else are we seeing digital trends on local advertising, up and down? What's in, what's out? What are you seeing?
Well, there are really only 2 or 3 things in digital that are in this year. And remember, it's just kind of a market correction. So you have to look at it on a relative basis, even though it may be down. And what do they say? Targeted banners and social media down 1.8%. When you compare that with some other things that are down double digits, you go, wow, that's not doing too bad. So there are 3 things at the top of the digital list that advertisers really, really want. 2 of them are on a low dollar basis, which means it's kind of easier to get growth out of something like that. And 1 isn't. And the 2 that are on a low dollar basis that we see pretty high growth in is streaming audio and podcasting and OTT. Now, podcasting is very, very small dollars. I think it's less than $1 billion this year out of a total of, say, 100 million or 100 billion. So it's only about 1%. But OTT and streaming video are growing really, really quickly and gaining a lot more credence among advertisers. The third one is targeted banners, which is mainly social media. There's a bit of a hiccup there. You would ordinarily see growth, but there's a bit of a maybe somewhat political, backlash. And we see national advertisers withdrawing. What national advertisers do typically trickles down, and you begin to see an effect within 6 months to a year. in local markets. They go, oh yeah, they read publications and they go, yeah, we should cut back on that. So we're seeing a little bit of that cutback in targeted banners, which again is mostly social media. And we're also seeing the rise of some mitigating, like a stabilization, maybe decline in Facebook advertising, the rise of some things like Instagram and TikTok.
Really? Okay. So now I know that the Borrell Associates model is you like to release aggregate studies in hopes that someone will purchase the local study because all markets are different. And there's no question, especially with the COVID impact. Can you pick a couple markets that are drastically different? Because I'm sure you've been working on your client companies now. You're doing a private, the day before this broadcast, you'll be doing your own private webinar for your clients. Give us a couple of examples of changes, differences in the landscape of the U.S.
Sure. Can I look over here at this screen for those who aren't just listening to the podcast but viewing it?
Okay.
You're asking me to reveal some of our stuff from the webinar. I'm looking at. Let me pick a particular variance. We have local advertising in Colorado Springs down this year 7.5%, and in Fort Wayne down 24%. So you see some really big variances in markets, and it's due. I did a video, it's on our website, just describing what we saw. And I was sitting in Williamsburg, Virginia, which is where we are. And it's a big tourism market. Many people been here, been to Busch Gardens, Colonial Williamsburg, Water Country, USA. And what I said was, sitting on this bench, look at this place. It's empty. Nobody's here. And all these businesses around here don't rely on local customers. They rely on tourists. And it's dead. Busch Gardens is still closed. It's right over there, by the way. Mm-hmm. And 40 miles south is Norfolk, Virginia, which, Mike, as you know, is heavily dependent on the military, which is an essential business, right? So 40 miles apart, even though technically they're in the same television market, there's Williamsburg extremely depressed, and there's Norfolk doing just fine. So those are some of the differences we see. There are other things, length of shutdown. Some places like Rochester, New York I don't mean to laugh, saw a shutdown very quickly, but again, have to untie it from the pandemic, the health issues, the political concerns, the unrest out there politically and things like that, and look at it as a heartless economist and say, this is the short, sharp recession that Bernanke predicted, 6 months ago, and that others have said is coming, is coming, is coming. Well, here it comes. But people are still buying stuff. Right. Their habits of buying are different. So we're just seeing a lot of differences per market due to that. It's the first big recessionary period that we've seen that's had really uneven results geographically. It's never really happened geographically this way before.
That's true. Strange. 2008, it was homes and investments. So that impacts any market. But in this case, you're right, hospitality. If you're hospitality driven in your market, you're in trouble. But if you have a huge military base or you're a state capital, I call that where the bureaucratic dollars, or a huge college town. Now there's another one, Gordon, college towns. It's hard to predict where that's going to be depending on the school's philosophy of opening up in the fall, right? I mean, that's another issue.
Well, it appears that most schools are planning to, I see a number of schools planning to reopen, but who the hell knows, Mike, what's going to happen? We try to, kind of pull ourselves away from that, like I said, and look at it in a very, unemotional, unpolitical way, and just say, what's going to happen? What has happened in the past? What can we draw from? What happens during a recession? They all follow very, very specific, kind of easy to predict periods of bounce back. It's a market correction is what it is. The question is, how long will it be? That's right. Kind of the only question. So we kind of know that. That's why everybody's coming out with their forecast now. We have seen that there's been a market adjustment in the economy. Now, there are other little things, like you said, like tourism, college towns, and things like that. But there are also these things that affect it, and that is shutdowns and the length of shutdowns, because they kind of adjust things a little bit as well. Now that they will even out, and eventually people will become familiar with the new normal and determine how to do things, how to purchase stuff, but they'll still purchase stuff, and advertisers will still need to advertise. And by the way, one other thing, you hear about a lot of businesses kind of going out of business. What we've discovered is that most of them were the ones that didn't advertise.
Of course.
So of course, but when you look at that, you go, well, serves them right. I'm sorry to say that. You didn't say, I'm out here, I'm here, patronize me. You just stayed silent and then served your own core customer base. And then when things got bad, you stopped because you weren't advertising to begin with. You really didn't communicate with them. And the aggressive advertisers stole your business away.
Well, you and I did, when COVID-19 hit, I, on behalf of ENP, did webinars, broadcasts for small business owners in various markets. And you did the same thing for your clients as well. And I think we both had the same message. When all the dust settled, we were trying to explain to small businesses, history proves that when you market through tough economic times, you do better on the back end. And if you don't, you fall by the wayside. So, I mean,
that's true.
That's just a given.
Mike, there's a couple of things I wanted to mention as well, that we had done a survey that is, I don't think we've released it yet, but we'll probably this week, around the 1st of July. We asked advertisers what their post-COVID-19 spending plans were. And we also asked them which types of things they were buying more of as a result of the pandemic onset, not as a result of, but since there. And we found some really, really interesting things there. Streaming video and OTT were at the top in terms of things that they increased. We have 29% of advertisers saying they increased that. And then this interesting one, it should interest newspapers quite a bit, content marketing was up 25%, or not up 25%, 25% of businesses said they increased their content marketing. And that's an area where I think newspapers play really, really well and should be a very high interest to them.
That's the one advantage that newspapers have over radio stations, is we have more content to place around the content marketing of the advertisers.
Yeah. The other, radio and TV are a bit more entertainment. I know the newsrooms would hate to hear me say that, particularly in TV, but there's one other thing, and that is we asked them their post-COVID-19 spending plans. And in terms of content marketing, 31% said that they would spend more than currently, and 9% or 8% said they'll start spending for the first time. So 39% of businesses said they're going to spend more than currently or start spending on content marketing. That's really high. One more quick thing, Mike. When we looked at newspapers and those buying newspapers, 22% of newspapers buyers said post-COVID-19, when things subside in their area, they're going to spend more on newspaper advertising. That is a really good barometer.
Good news, sobering news. Let's just run it down again. The magic number overall for the country for local advertising expenditures based on Borrell's revised numbers is 13 and change down.
Correct.
But newspapers print down 33. It wasn't as bad for radio and TV, but they're still significantly down when it comes to legacy media. Digital is not doing too bad through this, but if you were to give some advice to any operator, if any media company now, look at OTT. Do I have that correct? I mean, definitely be looking at that as a product to offer. Content marketing still remains strong. Targeted banners, which you said leans towards Facebook, but I still include that in programmatic, right? I mean, a target is a target is a target.
Right.
Those remain strong as well. What am I missing? Just to give a quick.
Well, I think that's good, Mike. If you're looking at the formats, I think a little more of maybe a broader strategic view would be, okay, we've said that content marketing is important and newspapers have a forte in that area, maybe more so than other media, all other traditional types of media. Think of how that plays into the advertiser's mindset. Advertisers really want people to know about their business. They have content, they have advice, but they're not writers. They're not editors.
Exactly.
So if you could take some of that expertise, I don't know, maybe a lot of the, laid off reporters and editors that are out there and get them into content marketing, how would they help this business communicate what they have and what they do and the unique value proposition of this LASIK surgeon or this dentist or someone else? That's really important because they don't have in that business level those communication skills, and they've been dying because they have a medium now at their disposal where they can put something out there and it goes right to consumers, but they don't have the skills to do that. Newspapers have those skills. I think there's a really good message in here. We can help you with your content marketing, and we can get your content and information out there in the best possible light in all the most viable channels, whether it's OTT or whether it's print or whether it's audio or whatever it may be.
Excellent. If someone wants to attend, obviously we're date stamping this. We're releasing this on Tuesday morning, the 30th. Later that same day, if you're watching us on that day, you'll be doing a webinar. Do they still have a chance to join you at BorrellAssociates.com? Is that correct?
They do. I don't think we have a link on our website to this. We tend to get 2,000 or 3,000 people sign up, and we hit limits, so we have to be careful. I mean, it's a happy thing, right? But the easiest thing to just shoot me an email. Just send an email to info@BorrellAssociates.com, and we'll send you the link. Or if you're a member of our local marketing trends, local advertising and marketing trends LinkedIn group, go to that group, and there's a link right at the top for the webinar there.
Will there be a recording available for people to see?
Yes, if you register, you will get the recording once it's completed.
Well, Gordon, we put you on the spot. Normally when we're going to do an interview, we would send some questions, and you did a great job doing this without any prep. I asked you if we could be the first to release this. Thank you, my friend. So you were amazing.
Here's my prep. I had these taped to my screen because this is from the presentation. Here is a slide from today's presentation. For those who want to see it, it's all here. Here's Group M's forecast. So I was prepped. Thanks, Mike.
You're quite welcome. And by the way, to you and the family and to all the staff at Borrell, I love you guys dearly. Please stay healthy and well.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks for all you're doing for the industry. You are doing a remarkable job at editor and publisher, and I really mean that. What a great thing for the industry for you to be publisher of that group.
We appreciate it. Thanks, Gordon.